What's up, my fellow emo, pop punk, metalcore music lovers? Matrix here, and you are locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your alt-rock music fix. And we are back. We have an absolutely jam-packed episode today. I have, I think, 6 albums to review, which is just absurd. This is what happens when I wait an extra week and try to review all of these at the same time. We are going to count down the top 5 tracks from February. And I'm going to make an announcement. It's something that's going to be up on my Instagram as well today in terms of what we're going to do in March. I got a few special podcasts coming out in March, and I got some stuff that you guys can play along with as well. And I hope you guys enjoy this. This has been a really fun idea and something that has been a lot of fun to develop. So looking forward to announcing that to you guys at the end. As always, every social media that you want to follow me on is linked in the description of this episode: Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Matrix Music Review. Head on over to Apple Music and Spotify and leave a 5-star review. Leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. And also make sure that you are sharing the playlist over on Spotify, Control-Alt-Save, as we continue to update that throughout the year and add more and more tracks to that to make it the best alt-rock playlist of the year. And as I always do, I ask that you share this podcast with friends, family, whoever you may know that might be interested in alt-rock music, or if they're just looking for a new podcast, give us a shout and see what everybody thinks of us. So with that, we're going to jump right into our reviews with the first album, which is Traumatic Livelihood by Jazmin. This is the first full-length album from Jazmin, and it's really hard not to draw Olivia Rodrigo comparisons when you listen to this album, when you listen to this artist in general, but a little more edgy than that. You know, they are an artist that definitely has a edge to everything that's being sang, and even every instrumentation choice on this album has a little bit of an edge to it and a little bit of grit to it. And I think that's what makes this album so special and so different, is that it's not something that you can just say, oh, well, we've heard that before. I mean, the second song in, we have a song called Piggy, and Piggy is all about this parental figure and how they're a scumbag, bottom of the barrel, and the melody roll from scumbag, bottom of the barrel is incredible. I love that little choice that was made on that specific song. But when you start to listen to that song, you hear all these little nuances to it and all of these little one-liners or things that actually jump out and grab you. Like there's a line in this track that says, "Your clothes are clean, but there's a teen for you to date." And it just kind of paints a really dramatic, a really sketchy picture of what could be going on here. And this album also has a lot of relatability throughout it as well. You move on to a track like Favorite Toy, and I think that's something that everybody has felt at least once in their lives, where you're just being used as their favorite toy, and you know, it hurts to be used and it hurts so much, but you're not strong enough to run away from that. And all of those different lines are incorporated in there. And I think they do an extremely good job of making you feel like you're present in that situation, or making the situation feel like it is about something that you've experienced. And I think that's one of the things that I came away from this album realizing, was that certain albums that you listen to, you don't always have to, how I'm going to say, lock in. You know, you don't have to lock in and listen to it and, you know, be so locked in that you're paying attention to every single word or every single line, because you can kind of get the main idea of what's going on. But on an album like Traumatic Livelihood, it is so important, at least upon first or second listen, to really just kind of clue in and listen in to what's being said and how it's being delivered, because they have such a story to tell in each and every song that's what makes it so special. I think my favorite off of this album is the song called Shit Show, which is just this melodic, catchy singing at the start that also kind of has some like classical backing tracks to it that doesn't seem very appropriate for a song like Shit Show, but I think that's part of the creativity around it. Like when you hear a song called Shit Show, I think most people would immediately go to, okay, well, it's going to be this like heavy hitting, high guitar energy, high drums, and you come in with almost this like string instrumentation in the background as the backing track. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's such a creative choice, and that's why Jazmin is such a phenomenal artist to me, is that they are really setting themselves apart from some of the other artists out there. You know, I made that statement at the beginning that a lot of people are going to draw the Olivia Rodrigo comparison, but I don't think that's fair, because I think what Jazmin's doing is a little better. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. Y'all know I reviewed Olivia Rodrigo's album last year and I loved it, but there's something about the raw honesty in this album that really kind of sets it apart and makes it so unique and different from what we've heard from artists such as Olivia Rodrigo. You know, I think the last track I want to talk about is Black Dress, which is just this haunting track. Kind of makes you feel like it's about the state of the world and, you know, how you're sick of trying and how death can seem so powerful, but it really only lasts and affects you for like 10 minutes and then you move on to the next one, and people just move on to whatever the next news story is or whatever the next problem is. That's kind of just how they operate. And I think that's very accurate with how the world operates today. Somebody famous passes away and it seems like it's this outpouring of love and this outpouring of tributes. And then a couple days later, you know, the next person passes away and it kind of just repeats that cycle. And it just, you never really feel like anybody has their full moment to be appreciated sometimes. So overall, I think this album was really strong. I think Jazmin's an artist that I've had on my radar for a little bit, and they definitely, you know, jumped off the page last year with Piggy, which was one of the singles, but I wasn't quite sure what to expect from a full project, and now that I have it, I'm really happy with it. I think it's an album that a lot of people are going to enjoy and a lot of people are going to connect with, and I'm excited to see that. I think they have a lot of potential and they have a lot of ability to really make a jump into the next level of fame, stardom, however you want to look at it, or even just popularity, however you want to call it. But I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. It's very strong, very solid. Love it as a first full-length album from Jazmin Bean. If you haven't heard it yet, go check out Traumatic Livelihood. Next up is the new EP from Set for Tomorrow called Initiation. And this is a very solid 5-track metalcore EP. And with EPs, a lot of the times, I feel like it depends on what kind of artist we have. Sometimes we get 4 tracks and they're all 3 of the 4 are old and we just are getting 1 new track and it's being called an EP. I liked that on this specific EP, we got 3 new tracks and 2 that we had heard before. I think that was really fun to see, and it got my interest peaked a little bit quicker. I still think when I'm listening to this album, or this EP, I should say, Wager still has that really high energy sound to it, and I love that the track Wager has so many different gambling references, and it's basically referring to life, and I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. One of my favorite lyrics on the EP came from Absolve, where they said, "Cage my brain, I'm going to swallow my own key." And I think that really is just a great way to say that I'm trapped in my own mind and I can't let myself out, or I'm the only person that can let myself out. I love that little piece in there. And then I love the chorus on a song like Murder, which is potentially the heaviest song on the EP. I think that's probably one argument that we could have, but to me, it's one of the heaviest songs on the EP. I really enjoyed it. So not much to say about this EP from Set for Tomorrow. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. You guys know I only do EPs out of 5. Really strong. Had a lot of fun with it. Just not a whole lot to say about an EP here, but still great. Go check it out. Initiation by Set for Tomorrow. Next up is To Figure Out from Shoreline. This is the 3rd album from Shoreline, and they have a very unique style in terms of vocal delivery and even some of the instrumentation that they have. It's a hardcore emo-ish sound. I don't know that I have a comparison for you guys. I really couldn't come up with it. And to be honest, that's really the theme of this specific review for Shoreline, is that I got nothing. Like, I can't make heads or tails of this album. I don't know why. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just kind of one of those albums that for some reason I can't really wrap my head around it. And I think it's because it is so different and so different from what I've been listening to lately that's what's causing me to really have some of these like, what in the world is going on here questions about this album. Workaround is a song that has an 80s rock punk feel to it. So does Health. Both of those songs have that like 80s rock feel, which is enjoyable. And then you have an energy come in on a song like Green Paint. It's got such a heavy chorus that comes from that melodic verse, which I personally love. I love when you either get one or the other and then they flow into whichever one they didn't use previously. I think that's such a unique way to structure a song. That track, Green Paint, also has my favorite lyric on the album as well, which is, there's a difficult solution to every difficult problem. And that's just perfect for life. I mean, I think everybody can agree that a lot of problems that we have are difficult and can make us really sit and think, but at the end of the day, we usually know what the solution is. It's probably a difficult one, but it's the only way to get the problem solved. And I think that's really where I'm probably gonna stop with this review. I like I said, I just could not for the life of me make heads or tails of it. I liked a song like Pen Name. I liked Loose Contacts. It was kind of all over the place for me, and it works. Like, the all over the place nature works, but for me, I couldn't bring it all together in my mind to really wrap my head around what was going on. So overall, I think it's definitely worth a listen. For me, it's about a 7.5 out of 10. It's still pretty strong, but at the end of the day, probably not one that I'm going to go back and re-listen to a whole lot throughout the year, but go check out To Figure Out from Shoreline and let me know what you guys think. Next up, we got Exit Emotions from Blind Channel. This is Blind Channel's 5th album, and they are a new metalcore band. And honestly, this album starts off with such a killer line, which is, life is what you fake it. And damn, that is a thinker. It's one of those that, like, to me, definitely is something that I can relate to. You know, I think a lot of times we feel like we're just going through life and maybe we're faking things and not doing things the way we should, but it was definitely a thinker, and I think hearing a line like that was kind of different and something that, you know, obviously stood out to me because it was right away, it kind of drew me in. What else drew me in was the energy on this record. You know, when I'm talking about what this band sounds like or who this band is for fans of, I think obviously they have a From Ashes to New collaboration on here. I think that's a pretty similar comparison, but I also think they have a little bit of issues in them where we get those melodic sounds and then we also get those harder scream, edgier sounds as well. You know, a song like Wolves in California may not have the heaviness to it, but it's a pretty cool commentary on just kind of the fake nature of people in California. And I think that's something, again, everybody can agree with. And then it flows into the From Ashes to New collaboration, which works so well. And I can see a song like that getting a lot of commercial success. I think when you put a band like From Ashes to New that has seen some commercial success with a band like Blind Channel that definitely has some more global success, I think that's a perfect way to kind of standardize and get some commercial opportunities for that. The song that I think has the most sound like an Issues track to me, which is where I got that comparison from, is Keeping It Surreal. I think there's no way you can listen to that track and not say, holy shit, is that not an Issues song? Did we like pull that from a vault somewhere? It definitely has the vocal delivery of it and even just the sonic piece behind it as well. And even lyrically, you know, we have a lyric in there that says, if I died in a dream, would you wake me up? And there's plenty of one-liners in it as well. You know, you get a song or you get a line like, clicked not a robot and now I have to learn how to be human. And then that flows into a song called Die Another Day. And Die Another Day really is this low, somber sounding track about waiting for something that's really going to spark you to just die another day, something to kind of hold on to, something to keep moving towards. You know, when you always feel lost or you feel like there's no way out or there's nothing that is keeping you there? What's that one thing that's going to say, all right, you know what? I'm not ready to do anything like that today. I'm ready to, let's keep moving along, keep living. And I think Blind Channel's a band that I kind of had a feeling this album cycle was going to be destined for great things when the first track that I heard from this cycle was Happy Doomsday. And when you hear a song like Happy Doomsday, it's hard not to just get infected by the energy of a track like that. I mean, it is just so infectious. But they were doing so good on this album. Everything was great. I loved every bit about it. And then I got to Not Your Bro. And that song just, it's not good. I'm sorry. Like, I think I would have been fine with the track. I think I would have been okay with a song like that on there, except for the production choice of putting in bro in every verse. That was just like a backing track that killed it for me. And I know that I'm sure some people are going to like that and think that's creative, and it definitely is, but it just did not work for me. So up until that point, we were doing fantastic. It was looking like it was going to be a really, really strong album, and it was, but that one thing just really kind of knocked it down a few notches in my book. So, overall, I think this was such a strong metalcore, new metal album. I think when you're 5 albums in, you're hoping that a band's hitting their stride, and I think Blind Channel definitely accomplished that on Exit Emotions. I think it was really fun. I'm going to give it an 8.2 out of 10. Like I said, probably would have been a little higher if I wouldn't have gotten smacked by bro at the end. But, either way, 8.2 out of 10 is nothing to be mad at. Go check out Exit Emotions by Blind Channel. Next album is Jaded by Bronnie. This is the debut album from Bronnie. We've got a lot of alt pop. We got a lot of pop punk-ish sounds in this album. And Bronnie's an artist that I've talked about a lot on this podcast with different EPs, different singles, and a lot of them show up on here. So this is going to be a relatively short review because it does encapsulate a lot of the things that I've already talked about with her. So you can go back to previous podcasts and check those out. But either way, the energy on this album is another one, kind of like Blind Channel. It's a little different in terms of what I'm saying is energy, but it's definitely noticeable right away with this. And Bronnie definitely has a bit of an 80s vibe as well when you get a song like Drown in Your Misery, or even Oh, which is still one of my favorites from the EP days. It just kind of shows that like appreciation for that sound, but also how clean and how clear the vocal delivery is and the production behind it is. And I think that's really what stood out, is that you can hear some of the production choices that were made and really say like, yeah, that made a lot of sense. That was really impressive. But I think this album just has so many things that remind me of something else. Toxic is a song that kind of reminds me of an old school teenage movie where they're talking about being toxic or whatever. And then we have a song like Lipstick, which is a real standout to me that still to this point, I'm still trying to figure it out. There's a line in there that says, "You were never free on a Thursday night." And it's an interesting choice for a night to try and hang out, a Thursday night. I mean, obviously, we're so used to hearing about Friday night and Saturday night and things like that. But honestly, to hear somebody say a Thursday night definitely had my attention right away. And then the last thing I want to touch on with this album is that at the end, I think it's the final 2 songs, it's Friend Zone and it's Galaxy. The guitar riffs on them are so awesome and so clean that you got to go check those out if nothing else. The guitar riffs in there are spectacular. Some of the best I've heard in a while, so go check those out. But overall, it was a fun listen. I like, now that everything's out and it's all been put together, to kind of see what this final product is. I feel like we got a ton of singles last year, and just kind of, every new single that came out, the way Spotify lists everything is always, it's a new EP, but it really was just a new single that was being released. And now that everything's together, I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Bronnie. I think I have a lot of faith in what they're doing, and I'm excited to see it. So overall, I'm going to give this a 7.7 out of 10. Again, it's probably because I heard a lot of these already. Nothing against them, just the way it's going with this. Love the album. Love the artist. Go check out Jaded by Bronnie. And last but certainly not least, we have Life's Going Great from Games We Play. This is officially Games We Play's first album. and god damn did he hit a home run. That's honestly, I could end the review right there, and I think y'all would probably agree. Everything I've heard so far is that everybody's loving this album as much as I have, but I'm going to jump into it and give you guys some more of a breakdown because this was such a fun listen. And I'm going to be honest, the first 3 tracks on this record is the best 3-song stretch that I've heard in years. There is no way to construct an album better and start off an album better than what Games We Play did here on Life's Going Great. We start with a song called The End. Naturally, little witty way to start an album with a song called The End, but when you go through that whole song, it is nothing but an amazing chorus and one-liners and just fantastic pieces. And the pre-chorus of we clock in like a 9-to-5 job, but when we do, we both keep our t-shirts on, which kind of like fades and gets this like vocal production behind it. And then it blasts into the chorus of she likes to party, I like playing Atari, which don't even get me started on playing Atari at this point. Like, that's awesome to hear something like that. And then goes right into a second verse of her butt is super fat, bigger than my insecurities. I'm sorry, but there's nobody out there right now that's doing shit like this. Nobody out there is coming up with lines like this. It's just so different and so unique. Like, that's what makes Games We Play such a phenomenal artist and why he's rising so high up the scene right now. I think if you look at it, like, obviously doing their own tour, whatever, you don't get on the So Much for Tour Dust bill with Fall Out Boy, with Jimmy Eat World, with Sherry Moore, with Hot Mulligan, if you're not bringing it every damn night. And when you get an album like this, just kind of cements your status. And then from The End, we roll into a song called Typical Me, which to me has this Sugar Ray, Third Eye Blind infused pop punk sound that really just immediately invokes that feeling of nostalgia, whether it's early 2000s, summertime, it doesn't matter. That's what it's going to bring you to, regardless of what kind of feeling you're in at that time. Another song with such a wild pre-chorus because they're going to have people running around singing, I got a small ass dick, like, I'm sorry, you're going to hear people just singing that and being like, what the hell did they just say? Like, where'd that come from? This is literally the effect that these songs are having on people because it's just so catchy and it's right there and in your face. Like, you can't help but sing it. And then from Typical Me, we flow into Girl Shaped Crater, which I don't think I've ever really like fully talked about on the pod. I know I touched on it last month as one of my top songs of January, but it is just this amazing love song, and the transition from The End to Typical Me to Girl Shaped Crater is just a perfect 1, 2, 3 hit. But this album is full of lyricism. It's full of thought-provoking lyrics, sounds, however you want to look at it. On a track like Petty Enemy, you get lines like, I hope you cry on your birthday and no one shows up. You meet all your heroes and they think you suck. Like, that's an immediate slap to the face, but I think we've all felt that before about somebody that we've really disliked. We've all had that feeling of, you know what, I don't really care what happens to you, I hope the worst happens to you. And that's a nicer way of saying it, like Games We Play did, but, we've all kind of had that feeling before. And honestly, the interlude on this album, which kind of serves as like a midpoint, the interlude with Pete Wentz is absolutely hysterical. I think, Pete has become this icon in the scene with all his work with Fall Out Boy, but to hear him just do this like phone conversation with Emin and then just blast into a drum solo, which is phenomenal, by the way. There's nothing bland about this album, like Emin said. He's like, the album's just kind of bland, Bullshit, dude. Like, this album, there's nothing bland about it. This is top tier alt rock, pop punk, whatever the hell you want to call it. This is top of the line. Everybody's loving it. Everybody's gonna love it. And the drum solo and the Pete Wentz interlude just adds to the non-blandness. And then the second half of the album is a little bit mellower in terms of sonic sounds, but it's still phenomenal. You get that Too Young transition into a song like Pretty Boy, which Pretty Boy is all about being jealous of another guy and thinking that, everybody thinks he is something that, he really isn't. Like, he's a weed dealer, but he's not actually sinning. He could never do that. It's all about that kid that like can do no wrong no matter what he does. And I think that's hysterical because we all have known people like that in our lives too. But I think one of my favorite songs on this entire record, besides the top three, is Naked. And I think the self-conscious theme is kind of evident throughout this entire album if you listen to it. And I think everybody's self-conscious, and it's kind of nice to hear somebody talk about, different things that they're self-conscious about and, really connect with it. I kind of connect it with, a song like Naked, and I connect with a song like The End and all these other things. And it's just, it gives you a lot of hope and a lot of faith in what the next stage for the scene is. I think everybody's been on that nostalgia kick, and we've gotten a lot of our old elder bands back, and they're kind of returning to form, some better than others, but we're kind of waiting to see. I had a conversation last week with a friend that we were talking about just the alternative music scene in general and how she's hesitant to really look at some of the new bands, but Games We Play was one of the bands that she really was liking, and I think that's something that you can kind of build off of, right? Like, the only way to continue to keep the scene alive and keep the scene moving forward is to have new artists like Games We Play, Arrows in Action, Magnolia Park, Loveless, that are going to come out and continue the work of bands like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Paramore. They can still be there and do what they're doing and kind of progress with their evolution like we've seen, as long as we continue to have newer artists and newer bands that continue to say, hey, you know what, we have a real reverence for what you guys did. We think we can do it just as well, do it some justice. And so here's what we got. And I think we're doing a great job with that. And I think people just need to open themselves up a little bit more to some of these newer artists. Give them a shot. The worst that happens is you don't like it. I'm telling you right now, you're not going to dislike this Games We Play album. Overall, I'm going to finish this review by saying there is so much on this record that you can connect with. There's so much on this album for everyone. There is nothing that's going to, deter you from listening to an album like this. There's not really any songs on here that I didn't appreciate or didn't like. And so I'm actually shocked to say that this album is getting a 10 out of 10. I don't know if I've ever given a 10 out of 10 on this podcast before. We'd have to really go back and see what we went through, but this is a 10 out of 10. It's our first 10 out of 10 for the year. Well-deserved, well-earned. Go check out Life's Going Great by Games We Play. That wraps it up for our album reviews this week, but we are going to talk about the top 5 singles from the month of February. February was jam-packed with new music, and as evidenced by the 6, 7, however many albums I just reviewed, it was just jam-packed full of good stuff. I mean, February was a great month for this scene, so I'm loving it. And our number 5 track for the month of February was Nightmare by Fame on Fire. Really energetic track. I'm not really quite sure why I connected with it so much, but Nightmare by Fame on Fire coming in at number 5. At number 4, I got Ignorance by Letters Sent Home featuring Dead Lakes. They work so well together, and I didn't know that they were going to right away. Both bands that I've listened to, I reviewed Dead Lakes' album last year. Letters Sent Home was a band that's been on my radar for a little bit, and I was definitely shocked to see this as a collaboration, but it works so well together. It's such a fun song. That's the number 4 track for February. Before I get into the top 3, I'm going to give you 2 honorable mentions because I couldn't make my mind up, Of course, because we had so much in February, I'm a little indecisive, but 2 honorable mentions I just wanted to mention. Addicted by Loveless. I think Loveless is really destined for big things this year. They are definitely on my breakout list watch, even though I think everybody knows who Loveless is. I think they're ready to explode to a next level. And then also Shoot Our Way Out by Good Hangs. I think Good Hangs keeps turning up every month with a new track, or every so often with a new track, and I'm always just connecting with it, and I'm always just loving what they're doing. So I got to keep mentioning them because I feel like enough people don't know about them yet. So if you haven't heard it, Good Hangs, go check them out. It's linked in the playlist. Give them a listen. You're going to love them. All right, time for our top 3. And honestly, you could put these in any order and I probably wouldn't be too mad, but this is the order I'm coming up with. Number 3, In the Middle by Between You and Me. This is such a fun track. I am so stoked. I get to see Between You and Me live in like 2 weeks, I think it is. Could not be more excited for that show. I'm really looking forward to seeing them live. If you can catch them on tour, I'm going to advise you do so because I know it took them a while to get back over here to the States, so go check them out. Number 2 is Mugshot by Huddy. This is probably going to surprise some of y'all because I was not expecting to love this track as much as I love it. It has been on repeat, and I really don't have a good answer as to why. I mean, I think it's so catchy and so in your face that it's hard not to really like a song like this. And I did on a podcast a while back talk about how I feel like sometimes these artists like Huddy, like Jaden, don't really get enough respect in the scene because they're just seen as TikTok artists. And I think that's unfair, and I think that sometimes can get, a little overplayed. But when you look at a song like Mugshot and you listen to it, it's no different than some of the stuff that you hear from artists that organically came up in this scene. And now, of course, we have a little bit of a trap or a hip-hop beat that we can't help ourselves. We got to put that in there. But once you let the instruments do the work and get into the electric guitars and the drums, Mugshot's a hell of a song. So go check out Mugshot if you haven't heard it yet. And that brings us to our number 1 song of February, You're the One by Nick Karcher. Look, I talked about this on my last podcast about how damn catchy this song is, and it still is in my head, and I still find myself walking around my apartment, and all of a sudden it'll just pop right into my head, the damn chorus. Here it comes again. I think my girlfriend's probably tired of hearing me say that damn song right now, but either way, Nick Karcher, well on his way to being one of the next big things in the scene. I have a lot of faith in that, so you heard it here first. That wraps it up for our singles of February, and with that, we move into my favorite thing that I've been dying to talk about and dying to tell you guys about because I am really bad at keeping secrets, but I did a good job. I kept this one a secret, and that is, what are we doing for the month of March? Now, you're going to get your standard reviews. There's no way I can get around those. I'm going to try and keep up with those on my weekly basis. I know I haven't been great with that lately, but we're going to try. In addition to that, every week in March, you're going to get a new podcast, an additional one. And that's because we are doing something called March Sadness. So if you head on over to my Instagram page, I'm going to have a link in that page and on one of my posts that will take you to a bracket. And so, in the spirit of March Madness and NCAA basketball tournament, I created a 57-team bracket based off of the 57 albums that are going to be performed in full at When We Were Young Fest this year. So a little bit about how this is going to work. You guys are welcome to do prediction brackets. Show me your brackets. I want to see them. I want to see who you think has the best album from When We Were Young Fest this year. Each week, I'm going to go through section by section, region by region, and tell you who I think went through and gets to the Final Four. Once we have our Final Four, I'll do a final episode where I break down who's our national champion, so to speak. Who is our March Sadness champion? Who has the best emo album from When We Were Young Fest? Now, before y'all get mad at me and say that this person's ranked higher than they should be, this person's ranked lower than they should be, let me explain how the seeding works. Seeds 1 through 7 were picked basically upon what are the biggest albums that I've seen on the sheet. I'm sorry, there's no way I'm letting a random number generator tell me that My Chemical Romance is the number 50 seed in this. Not fair. So we are going to give certain albums a bye. My Chemical Romance, Mayday Parade, Pierce the Veil, ones that no matter what happens, they're going to probably win their first round matchup. Also gives us a chance to give some more interesting matchups in brackets. You know, one of the most interesting matchups in our first round is we have a matchup between 303 and All-American Rejects. I am not ready to make that decision just yet. That is one that's going to haunt me for a little bit. But those are the types of matchups that I wanted to see what we could get. And I didn't want to have a situation where My Chemical Romance was facing off against Mayday Parade in round one. Let's give some of these albums their due respect, okay? So seeds 1 through 7 were just ones that I said, you know what? Automatic classics, we can move them on one round, and then we'll go from there. Seeds 8 through 57 were all picked by random number generator. So I went down the list, and I had my little wheel, and I spun the wheel, and I said, okay, Seoshin, what's your number going to be? Okay, it's number, I don't even remember what number it is. It's like 40-something or whatever. All right, let's put you in. That's how we did it. So before you get mad that, you know, Cobra Starship's like in the teens or, you know, the used is down in the 40s or the 50s, that's why. It was randomly generated for most of it, except for the first 7 seeds. Really going to have a lot of fun with this. When I do these new or these extra podcasts, I am actually going to break down these albums a little bit. I'm not going to go into super big detail, but these are albums that probably didn't get podcast reviews before. Like, podcasting wasn't a thing back in 2006 or whenever the hell some of these albums came out. So I'm also re-listening to all these albums. I've done a lot of re-listening on these already because I wanted to be prepared. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. I'm really looking forward to it and looking forward to seeing your brackets as well because yours is not going to be the same as mine. So let's go fill out a bracket. Send me your predictions. Let me see what you got. And let's have some fun with this in March. So March Sadness live on my Instagram. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. That wraps it up for me here on Matrix Music Review. I hope everybody enjoyed. As I always do, make sure that you are following on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Instagram is where I'm the most active, usually on a day-to-day basis. Send me any messages with your brackets. Send me any messages. Let me know who I need to be listening to, things like that. Head on over to Apple Music and Spotify. 5-star review. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the Games We Play album. Let me know if there's an album that you want me to review. Be happy to take a look at that. And as I always do, I'm going to ask that you share this podcast with friends, family, whoever you may have in your life that needs a new podcast, likes alternative music. Send it over their way, and let's continue to grow our little community of alt-rock music lovers. I will see you guys next week. Actually, that's not true. I'm going to see you guys later this week with our first March Sadness podcast. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you then.